Deadly drone strikes, intense battles along the front lines, and diplomatic moves from Washington to Berlin to Moscow. Just when it seemed the Russia-Ukraine war might be nearing a resolution, it has now entered a new, more volatile phase. And now, Russian President Vladimir Putin is demanding written guarantees from the West to stop NATO expansion eastward and ease sanctions on Russia as a part of any peace deal with Ukraine. According to Reuters, Putin also wants Ukraine to remain neutral and for frozen Russian assets in the West to be addressed. These are his demands if peace talks are to continue. That's from the Russian side as of now. Well, earlier, US President Donald Trump, who has been pushing for an end to the war, warned the Russian leader is playing with fire by refusing to talk ceasefire. Putin claims he's working on a peace proposal but will not accept any deal that does not meet Russia's core demands. And what does Ukraine say in all of this? It insists NATO membership must stay on the table and that it needs stronger Western security guarantees to deter future attacks. So both Russia and Ukraine are escalating tensions on multiple fronts, accusing each other of drone strikes. And now, Ukraine fears Russia is preparing for a summer offensive. Ukraine's emergency services say that one person was killed and 8 others were injured in a Russian drone attack overnight on settlements in Kharkiv. Firefighters were seen battling flames at a warehouse south of the regional capital. And while Kharkiv burns, Moscow faced its own attack. Russian officials say that their air defenses intercepted around 100 Ukrainian drones across multiple regions, including a swarm heading for Moscow. Other videos circulating on social media showed the aftermath in Zelenograd, which is Moscow's exclave. Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyan confirmed the attack on Zelenograd through Telegram.
Мы там стояли, как первый раз въебало, мы аж подпрыгнули, блядь. Это просто пиздец.
Well, active combat also continues along several points of the front line. Russia's defense ministry has accused Kiev of targeting civilian infrastructure inside Russia using Western-made drones and rockets. In retaliation, Moscow says it has launched cluster strikes on Ukrainian military depots, air bases and radar stations, even targeting foreign mercenary outposts. Meanwhile, Ukraine's general staff reported dozens of active battles with the most intense fighting in Pokrovsk. Ukrainian foreign minister claimed that Russia launched nearly 1,000 drones and missiles in the past 3 days, which he says is a proof that Moscow is not interested in any kind of peace. In Ukraine also, there's now growing concern about a possible new Russian offensive. Western media reports citing Ukrainian military officials and experts say that Russia is expected to launch a major offensive this summer, and that is in Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region. And that would not be surprising. We say that because the capture of Donetsk in its entirety has been a priority for Putin since the war started in 2022. In September that year, Putin had declared the whole of Donetsk, along with 3 other Ukrainian regions, to be a part of the Russian Federation, accompanying the main push into Donetsk, of which Russia now controls about 70%. The Kremlin reportedly plans to carry out smaller attacks along the border of Ukraine's northeast Sumy and Kharkiv regions. Ukraine's National Guard has confirmed that Russia may be preparing new attacks in Kharkiv. Ukraine's Chief of Staff of the 13th Karthia Brigade said that Russian forces are trying to move closer to the contact line, but they have so far failed to carry out assaults. The result of all of this, what is happening on the battlefield? Well, more pressure on Ukraine's already overstretched frontline troops and an advantage to Russian troops. The warnings over the offensive has already begun, and they come as the US brokered peace process has limped along. Meetings so far have been inconclusive. Ukraine has called for a 30-day ceasefire, but Moscow, it seems, has certain non-negotiables for the temporary truce. Now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky warns of a major Russian force amassing in Ukraine's northeast. Zelensky said that over 50,000 Russian troops, including elite units, have been positioned near Sumy, which is the region bordering Russia's Kursk. He believes the Kremlin aims to carve out a 10-kilometer buffer zone. While Moscow captured several border villages recently, Zelensky says that the Ukrainian forces pushed them back by 4 kilometers. That's near Kostyantynivka. Still, amid the fighting, Zelensky says that he remains open to any kind of peace talks, even a three-way meeting with US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Not just that, he also warned against the US leaving the Ukraine peace process, something which Washington has threatened if talks stall. The fate of Ukraine is also shaking European politics now. Recently, Germany and other European allies have lifted restrictions on the range of weapons being sent to Ukraine. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has voiced support for Ukraine's right to strike targets inside Russia, deep inside Russia. Of course, the Kremlin responded sharply. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova dismissed Merz's remarks as self-promotion and said that German weapons will not change the course of Russia's so-called special military operation. Even so, high-level dialogue continues. Zelensky arrived in Berlin today, where he met with Chancellor Merz, following up on a brief exchange in Kiev. Germany is not expected to announce new weapons, opting instead for what it calls strategic ambiguity. As far as Russia is concerned now, the Kremlin says the next round of direct talks with Ukraine will be announced soon. Speaking to reporters on Wednesday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov asserted that the neutral status of Ukraine remains one of Russia's key demands in the peace negotiations.
Speaking about Ukraine's NATO membership, I will remind that the neutral, non-aligned, and nuclear-free status of Ukraine has been solemnly proclaimed in this country's Declaration of Independence adopted in 1991. This specific obligation, namely the proclamation of the neutral, non-aligned, and nuclear-free status, forever made it possible to recognize Ukraine as an independent state by the Russian Federation and all the other members of the international community.
For now, the question is, what form will the next round of Ukraine-Russia talks take? Or will they happen at all? India has initiated a major step on its eastern frontier and appears to be reviving a long-dormant airfield in Tripura. A move that is not just calculated, but also signals strategic intent. Because there are reports of China helping Bangladesh in redeveloping a World War II-era airbase in Lal Munirahat district, which is located just 20 kilometers from the Indian border. Officials from the Airports Authority of India reportedly visited Kailash Airport in Tripura's Unakoti district on Monday. They examined the terrain, infrastructure, studied land availability, and assessed visibility factors, marking the first tangible step in bringing the defunct airstrip back to life after lying idle for more than 30 years. Now, besides being located close to the Indian border, Lal Munirahat is also located close to the Siliguri corridor. It's a narrow neck of land that connects the rest of India to the northeast, also known as India's Chicken's Neck. Lal Munirahat is also strategically located close to Jalpaiguri and Cooch Behar districts of West Bengal. So by reviving Kailash, India is not just reinforcing its eastern flank, but also ensuring All measures are in place against a potential Chinese footprint that is alarmingly close following reports of China helping Bangladesh in reviving the World War II airbase. The Indian Armed Forces reportedly deployed S-400 air defense missile system in the region, while a squadron of Rafale fighter jets was already stationed at Hashimara Air Base alongside MiG aircrafts. The Kailasher airfield was extensively used in the 1971 war. It not only supported the Indian Air Force but also reportedly provided the very first base for Operation Kilo Flight. Kilo Flight was the code name for the Mukti Bahini combat aviation formation that used civilian planes refitted for combat and reconnaissance missions during the war. The same unit later laid the foundation of the Bangladesh Air Force. And today, the stakes are different but just as high. Tripura currently depends on capital Agartala's airport for everything: civilian travel, emergency operations and supply chains. And restarting Kailasher offers a crucial option. It strengthens regional connectivity and sharpens India's military readiness in a sensitive zone. India is watching the skies and the map with a close eye. Just when you thought it could not get worse, the unthinkable has happened in Gaza. A day after Israeli forces opened fire on desperate crowds at an aid distribution site, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, backed by Israel and the US, has temporarily halted aid operations due to disorder. In a place where starvation is already widespread, the only functioning aid line has also now been paused. On Tuesday, at least 3 Palestinians were killed and 46 wounded. That's after Israeli troops shot at civilians. For what? Trying to access food. We told you about this last night on the show. But while the world watched in horror, something else happened. Something that went largely unnoticed. While Gazans were being fired at for trying to eat, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu openly rubbished the charge that people were starving in Gaza. According to reports, Bibi claimed Israeli troops pictured, photographed thousands of Palestinian detainees, and according to him, none looked, and I'm quoting him here, emaciated. He insists that Israel has been providing essential food, water and medicine since the beginning of the war. Of course, it's made without offering any proof. This despite mounting warnings from the United Nations as well as global bodies that there is acute food insecurity in Gaza. This despite a full Israeli blockade imposed in March, justified by claims that Hamas was hijacking supplies, claims which Hamas has clearly denied. Earlier this month, a global hunger monitor warned that 500,000 people in Gaza are on the brink of starvation. The 11-week siege by Israel has pushed Gaza to the edge. UN-run bakeries have shut down due to lack of fuel. Food prices are skyrocketing and malnutrition is rising. Just take a look at these visuals, images from Gaza. In Khan Yunis, displaced Palestinians are voicing anger and despair over the US-backed aid program.
Of course it failed, because there were injustice and humiliation. On top of starvation, more starvation too. The people felt humiliated, so I would take the aid, and with it, I take a humiliation. This is not acceptable, and not everyone go. Not everyone feel they can walk and arrive. There are people who can't walk this distance on foot. There are people with disabilities. There are people broken. There are elderly people. There is a woman who doesn't have a caregiver. How would they arrive to get these aid?
Should we go to Al-Mawasi, to get the aid being distributed? Should we go to Rafah to get them? No one has money to take a car or anything, and we can't bear this. This is unfair. We are thrown in schools among the rubbish, disease, flies, and dirt. We are thrown with our hunger and thirst. We can't enjoy a sleep. We spend the entire day thinking. The thought ruined us.
Meanwhile, the head of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees condemned Israel's aid model, calling it a waste of resources and a distraction from atrocities.
The model of aid distribution proposed by Israel does not align with core humanitarian principles. It will deprive large parts of Gaza, the highly vulnerable people, of desperately needed assistance. I believe it is a waste of resources and a distraction from atrocities.
Even as a trickle of aid resumes, Israel's military campaign rages on in Gaza. Israeli strikes have killed 3,901 Palestinians since the last ceasefire ended. Israel insists that it's only targeting Hamas fighters, and Hamas denies using civilians as cover. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation says it has distributed 8,000 food boxes, which is around equal to 462,000 meals. That's since Israel loosened the blockade last week. Israel also claimed that its model helps screen recipients and exclude anyone with links to Hamas. The U.S. has also defended this approach. U.S. State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce brushed off criticism as complaints about style. But the United Nations and major international NGOs have boycotted the GHF, accusing it of undermining neutrality, insisting that the aid to Gaza must be distributed independently and based on need and not politics. Meanwhile, the reality on the ground, the amount of aid getting in is a fraction of what's needed. The UN estimates that 500 to 600 trucks per day are required, but Gaza is nowhere near that. As the dust settled from Tuesday's shootings, Gaza today buried its dead. Mourners gathered to lay to rest those killed in Israeli strikes. At least 15 Palestinians died in fresh attacks on Wednesday, including 8 members of a single family. Since the war started, Israel's onslaught has killed more than 54,000 people, reducing large swathes of the Gaza Strip to rubble.
The people of Gaza and the people of Palestine love life like any people in the world. We want to live with dignity. What is happening to the Gaza Strip is unacceptable. The Gaza Strip is starving, besieged, and being exterminated. Every day, there is blood.
Game-changer political developments are taking place in Turkey, stirring deep controversy both inside and outside the country. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has appointed a team of legal experts to begin drafting a brand new constitution. This move, according to the president, is perhaps aimed at replacing what he calls an outdated and heavily military-influenced constitution, which was drafted following a military coup in 1980.
As of yesterday, I have assigned 10 legal experts to begin their work, and with this effort, we will proceed with the preparations for the new constitution. For 23 years, we have repeatedly demonstrated our sincere intention to crown our democracy with a new civilian and libertarian constitution.
But watchers see something far more calculated behind the move. Erdogan has governed Turkey for over 2 decades, first as a prime minister and then as president since 2014. And his latest decision adds fuel to the speculation that maybe Erdogan is maneuvering to stay in power well beyond 2028. That's the year his current term officially ends, under the existing constitutional rules. Under current law, Erdogan cannot legally run for office again unless early elections are triggered or the legal framework changes. A new constitution would conveniently pave the way for both scenarios, especially if the document rewrites the rule on term limits. But changing the constitution will not be easy because Erdogan and his party and its nationalist allies don't control enough seats in parliament to unilaterally push through a new constitution. That's where experts see a strategic pivot. Viewing Erdogan's recent moves towards resolving the conflict with the Kurdish militant group PKK might be aimed at winning the support of a pro-Kurdish party in parliament. Erdogan's aim to introduce a new constitution comes just months after Ekrem İmamoğlu, the popular mayor of Istanbul and Erdogan's key rival, was arrested and jailed on corruption charges. The arrest was widely viewed as politically motivated, sparking nationwide demonstrations. His arrest may have been timed to neutralize a key rival ahead of potential constitutional changes. Turkey is at a crossroad. Erdogan says he wants a new constitution, one that reflects universal freedoms. But critics warn that this could be the beginning of a long-term plan to entrench one-man rule, a forever president in Turkey.